Our reading will be some excerpts from writer-activist Adrienne Maree Brown's book, Emergent Strategy, Shaping Change, Changing Worlds. There are a couple nondescript references to in this reading to racialized violence, and I ask you to do what you need to do to care for yourself. Also, there's a reference in this reading to a person named Kenny Bailey. So I will just tell you that Kenny Bailey is one of the founders of the Design Studio for Innovation, which is an artistic research and development organization. Here's the reading. Imagination is shaped by our entire life experience, our socialization, the concepts we are exposed to, where we fall in the global hierarchies of society. Our ideas of right and wrong shift with time. Right now, it is clear to me that something is wrong if it hurts the planet. But if we don't claim the future, that sense of loyalty to Earth, of environmentalism, could become outdated. Kenny Bailey helped me understand this, that justice, rights, things we take for granted are not permanent. Once there were kings and queens all over the earth. Someday we might speak of presidents and CEOs in past tense only. It is so important that we fight for the future, get into the game, get dirty, get experimental. How do we create and proliferate a compelling vision of economies and ecologies that center humans and the natural world over the accumulation of material? We embody, we learn, we release the idea of failure because it's all data. But first we imagine. We are in an imagination battle. Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown and Renisha McBride and so many others are dead because in some white imagination they were dangerous. And that imagination is so respected that those who kill based on an imagined racialized fear of Black people are rarely held accountable. Imagination has people thinking they can go from being poor to a millionaire as part of a shared American dream. Imagination turns brown bombers into terrorists and white bombers into mentally ill victims. Imagination gives us borders, gives us superiority, gives us race as an indicator of capability. I often feel I'm trapped inside someone else's imagination, and I must engage my own imagination in order to break free. All of this imagining and the poverty of our current system is heightened because of scarcity economics. There isn't enough, so we need to hoard, enclose, divide, fence up, and prioritize resources and people. We have to imagine beyond those fears. We have to ideate, imagine, and conceive together. We must imagine new worlds that transition ideologies and norms. This is a time travel exercise of the heart. This is a collaborative ideation. What are the ideas that will liberate all of us? So ends the reading. I especially love how the closed captions caught a, yeah, I don't know if somebody actually said that in the room, but I love that. Thank you so much for that music. Catherine, you'll have to pop up and tell me because I can't see everybody in the room. You'll have to tell me what the sentiment in the room is, but I'm curious, at least from those of you online, how many of you felt moved to awe and wonder in the last couple of weeks by the images coming from the James Webb Telescope? I see some nods. All right, what's the sentiment in the room, Catherine?
I think it's universal. It's universal.
It's universal. Okay, all right, great. These images are truly remarkable, aren't they? We've got a couple on slides that we can show. First, there are the cosmic cliffs, which according to the Webb Telescope website is actually the edge of a gigantic gaseous cavity about 7,600 light years from us. NASA's website on the Webb Telescope says that this cavity was carved by the intense ultraviolet radiation and stellar winds from these extremely massive, hot, young stars at the center of the bubble, which is above the area shown in the picture. This period of very early star formation is difficult to capture, the website says, because get this, for an individual star, it lasts only 50,000 to 100,000 years. And then there's this composite image of Stephan's quintet, which is a grouping of 5 galaxies. One of the really outrageous facts about Stephan's quintet is that the topmost galaxy has a super massive black hole 24 million times the mass of our sun. A black hole in that galaxy is 24 million times the mass of our sun. Just outrageous. But I actually wasn't moved to awe and wonder by these images, at least not at first, because I was traveling and I missed the news about the images. I knew nothing about the telescope and I didn't learn about the release of the images until the Friday before last, when I was in the car taking 3 teens to a sports competition. One of these kids asked everyone in the car if we'd all seen the images, and we spent the next half hour talking about how perspective altering things like this can be. We all agreed that put in the perspective of something like young stars 7,600 light years away and periods of star formation that are uncommonly seen because those years last only 50,000 to 100,000 years. Time and space felt completely unimaginable. A kid in the car, who it may or may not be significant to say had been socialized as a boy, said the awareness of just how small we are in the scale of things was terrifying, while a kid in the car who had been socialized as a girl said it was really freeing, relieving actually, to have that kind of scale with which to measure the weight of her responsibilities. Truly remarkable images they are. And then remember how I was saying earlier that you are made of stardust? Stardust from this beautiful, ever-expanding universe in which there are only incredible, mind-blowing possibilities. In fact, not only are we made of stardust, but stardust is all over the place. What an incredible existence. But your imagination might go in some different directions as you sit here in this awareness of our stardust reality. For instance, it is possible that you are as likely to imaginatively respond to the news of our stardust reality as a signal that because the material of your body is billions of years old and will continue on into a potentially endless future, the particulars of your existence are insignificant. It's possible that you might imaginatively respond to the news of our stardust reality not as a signal of the miraculousness of your life, but of meaninglessness. No doubt, as Adrienne Maree Brown says, imagination is shaped by our entire life experience, our socialization, the concepts we're exposed to, where we fall in the global hierarchies of society. I would add that it's shaped even by our temperament. But I'm going to invite you to sit with this knowing of our stardust nature through a more life-affirming imagination. I believe that's what's needed in our world. I learned from colleagues this year about an emerging tradition at LGBTQ+ Pride events. It is something I plan to take to local events in my area next summer. Maybe this is a tradition you already have in your community. Colleagues told me that they have been offering stardust blessings at Pride. They've used biodegradable glitter as if a holy oil and have blessed people who have come to them for blessings with words like this: "You are made of stardust, born of the infinite creativity of the universe. We rejoice and give thanks that you are shining your light in this world." As a queer person in a world where some religious imaginations have rendered me an evil threat, even though I was raised as a Unitarian Universalist and largely affirmed in my identity from early on, these words in this context are deeply healing and life-affirming. Stories are good tools for building our imaginative capacity, so let me share a story with you. This story is from a beautiful children's book I highly recommend called Wanda's Roses. It's by Pat Brisson. I'm going to give you a summary version, so definitely check out the book for the whole thing and its beautiful language and pictures. In the story, a child named Wanda finds a bush growing in an empty corner lot that had been filled with trash and junk. Wanda decides that the bush is a rose bush that hasn't bloomed and decides to take care of it so that it will bloom. Each day she visits the lot to clear it of its garbage and talk to and water the bush. She even uses her school library for research. And her neighbors begin to notice the work she's doing. They help her out by moving trash with her and giving her water. But the neighbors are also pretty sure Wanda has misidentified her bush. They try to warn her that her bush isn't a rose bush, but Wanda insists. "You'll see," she tells them. "Soon this lot will be full of roses." In a few weeks, the roses haven't grown, however, so Wanda declares, "If my rose bush won't give me roses, I'll just have to give roses to my rose bush." When she sees each of her neighbors, Wanda gives them an invitation that says, "Please come for tea and muffins in Wanda's rose garden Saturday morning at 9. The only person she gives an invitation to who doesn't get nervous is the school librarian who's never seen Wanda's bush. While everybody else reacts with a quiet, "Oh no," or "Oh dear," the school librarian says to herself, "Great, I'll bring muffins." The next morning, when everyone arrives at Wanda's party, they are surprised to see Wanda's rose bush covered with paper roses that Wanda made and tied to each bare, thorny branch. But the bigger surprise is that everyone who came to the party had brought along a rose bush to plant near Wanda's, except the school librarian who had brought the blueberry muffins. So they have their muffins and tea and then get planting, and pretty soon, just as Wanda predicted, the lot is full of roses. It's a really cute story, but I'm not sharing this story to be cute. I'm sharing this story because we are in a world where some really terrible things are happening, and we are going to have to do the hard work of rebuilding our imaginative capacities specifically for radical life-giving purposes. And the difference between kids and adults is not necessarily even our imaginative capacity, but the kids haven't learned a bunch of things that constrict the possibilities. My oldest was around 7 years old when the Occupy protests were happening. We used to go take food to those who were camped out on the New Haven Green, and we would go for the demonstrations as well. I asked my son if he wanted a sign to carry and what it should say. He told me to write, "Yes, I want your money to give to the people who need it." When the demonstration ended, my son seemed sad, and I asked him about it. And in return, he asked me, why didn't anyone give me their money for people who need it? The way he figured it, people who had more than they needed and weren't sharing could change. His sign wasn't an attempt to be rhetorically clever or to invite people to think differently. It was an attempt to bring a real invitation into a new reality, to change how people were relating to their money, to do something else that very day. A year or so later, we were downtown for some reason, and a woman asked if I had any money to spare. In truth, I had $40 to my name that day, and I wasn't sure how I was going to get us all through the next week. I told the woman honestly that I didn't have any cash on me. But the same child, my son, stopped me, pointed a block down the street, and said, "Mama, isn't that your bank right there? Couldn't you go and get her some money?" And he was right about that too. I could get her some money, and it wouldn't have to be our last penny. So I did. I figured $40 wasn't enough to do all the things I needed to do that week anyway, so I might as well share a little of it. I haven't regretted it once. I'm not suggesting that we all need to take on that childhood naivete, but I am suggesting that we benefit from practicing the kind of imagination that doesn't constrict the possibilities before we even start. The kind of imagination that doesn't begin a conversation around community safety with the idea that defunding police or abolishing prisons means that we can't hold anyone accountable or eliminate dangers. In fact, an imagination that says, could we do a better job ensuring safety? What possibilities would nourish life rather than diminish or destroy it? The kind of imagination that's more open and expansive. The kind of imagination that's directed toward that which is life-giving. And one of the reasons to consider that kids might be good teachers is that they haven't abandoned play and experimentation. What if our congregations were places to play and experiment with new, more life-affirming ways of doing community? What if we took our religious lives as seriously as a child dressed up in a fairy costume takes being a fairy? Not just talking about the fairy, not just reflecting on the fairy, but embodying the fairy, living the fairy. It is true that some of us are more practiced at this than others. As a multiply disabled minister in a faith tradition that never imagined people who were disabled in the way I'm disabled ministering, I've had to practice imagining a world that people around me had already constricted to the realm of imagination. I've had to practice living into the joy of possibilities that others could not recognize. But even if you have never worked for roses that came into being only because of your capacity to imagine it, to work for it as if it was possible even when others told you there was no way, you can begin to play. You can begin to try out new things, to try something that might just be more life-nourishing. And it's possible when you do so that you will signal to others that the way is opening, that play is on, and anyone can join. The children are willing to redistribute the resources more fairly. The bank is down the street. Paper roses will be enough to start a garden. I will close with a reading. We Were Made for These Times by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. My friend, do not lose heart. We were made for these times. I have heard from so many recently who are deeply and properly bewildered. They are concerned about the state of affairs in our world now. Ours is a time of almost daily astonishment and often righteous rage over the latest degradations of what matters most. You are right in your assessments. The luster and hubris some have aspired to while endorsing acts so heinous against children, elders, everyday people, the poor, the unguarded, the helpless, is breathtaking. Yet I urge you, do not lose hope, most particularly because the fact is that we were made for these times. Yes, for years we have been learning, practicing, been in training for, and just waiting to meet on this exact plane of engagement. I grew up on the Great Lakes and recognize a seaworthy vessel when I see one. Regarding awakened souls, there has never been more able vessels in the waters than there are right now across the world. And they are fully provisioned and able to signal one another as never before in the history of humankind. Look out over the prow. There are millions of boats of righteous souls on the waters with you. Even though your veneers may shiver from every wave in this stormy roil, I assure you that the long timbers composing your prow and rudder come from a greater forest. That long-grained lumber is known to withstand storms, to hold together, to hold its own, and to advance regardless. In any difficult time, there is a tendency to veer toward fainting over how much is wrong. Do not focus on that. There is a tendency, too, to fall into being weakened by dwelling on what is outside your reach, by what cannot yet be. Do not focus there. That is spinning the wind without raising the sails. We are needed, that is all we can know, and though we meet resistance, we more so will meet great souls who will hail us, love us, and guide us, and we will know them when they appear. Didn't you ask for grace? Rise up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. The light of the soul throws sparks, can send up flares, builds signal fires, causes proper matters to catch fire. To display the lantern of the soul, to be fierce and to show mercy, both are acts of immense bravery and greatest necessity. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit. There will always be times when you feel discouraged. I too have felt despair many times, but I do not keep a chair for it. I will not entertain it. It is not allowed to eat from my plate. The reason is this: in my uttermost bones, I know something, as do you. It is that there can be no despair when you remember why you came to earth. When a great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe, there can be no doubt, but that is not what great ships are built for. So ends the reading. And a blessing by Andrea Hawkins-Kamper. Blessed are we who have gathered with open hearts together today. Blessed are we, the chalice lighters of resistance, justice, love, and faith. Blessed are we, the heretics, the outcasts, the walkers of our own way. Blessed are we, the border crossers, the refugees, the immigrants, the poor, the wanderers who are not lost. Blessed are we, the transgressors, the trespassers, the passers-by, the cause takers, the defiant, the compliant. Blessed are we, the hand extenders, the sign makers, the protesters, the protectors. Blessed are we, the trans women, the trans men, the non-binary, the cisgender, the multigender, the no gender. Blessed are we, the friend, the stranger, the lonely, the hidden, the visible, the authentic. Blessed are we who rise in solidarity. Blessed are we who cannot. Blessed are we who do not. May you be a blessing, and may you go forth this day imagining a new world into being.